Okay, it's about noon on Sunday, September 9th, 2018. I haven't been really good at keeping numbers on this, so sorry about that. I wanted to show you the beginnings of the composting system that I got going here. System sounds probably too formal. So I'm going to walk out and we'll take a look. Hello and welcome to, Carlin's Worlds. Yeah, that should work. I'm a wanderer, a tinkerer, sometimes a nomad, a military veteran. I do things differently. There will be tinkering. I have a motorcycle, a truck, and a school bus. I live off-grid, so there will be some solar, batteries, inverters, and maybe even some wind. It blows. And that's all I can fit into about 30 seconds. Oh, and please, if you like any of this, it would be really awesome if you could subscribe and click that notify bell. Drop a comment if you have any questions or ideas. Share, like, comment, subscribe, notify. Oh, and Patreon if you're really an awesome kind of person. Cool. On with the show already. Okay, so what I've been doing, the whole root of the system is I've got a bucket that I put a little bit of peat moss in. And I do my morning poops in there, and then I sprinkle a little bit more peat moss on top. And that's kind of the basis of a composting toilet system. All right. I've been using that inside the bus. I just put it in the back. I've got a screened window on the back of the bus right now. I have not really had a problem with the smell. You know, once in a while I can smell it a little bit, but it does not smell like a bucket full of poop. All right. It's end of September now, so I've been running this at least a month, I think, and it's been pretty hot. You know, it's been in the hundreds still. So believe me when I say if there was a bucket full of poop in the back of the bus, on the west end of the bus where the sun shines in the afternoon, when I come home, I would probably notice the smell. With that said, it hasn't been a problem. I think I smell the peat moss more than I smell the poop. Peat moss doesn't smell bad. It smells kind of earthy. Next time you're at the garden center, just find the peat moss and sniff the bag. You can probably smell a little bit through the bag even. So with that said, I just put a bucket worth in here and I've emptied this out. All right, so just to get an idea, this is the other thing. When I was using sand, it was bulking up quite a bit. The peat moss seems to be absorbing the moisture and then the volume reduces. So also I threw in some branches. It just makes it look nice, right? Because that is going to decompose, okay? I don't smell a horrible poop smell, okay? There's a little bit there because it's still pretty fresh. There was some of this morning's in there, all right? But the peat moss is wonderful for this. I've been really happily surprised, make sure it snaps on so it doesn't blow away, in that it doesn't really, I don't have this awful smell in the back of the bus. So I'm like, yay, you know, really. Now the wind's gonna blow. So this is stage 2. So what I did, I waited until the black trash can was pretty much full, maybe 80% full, okay? And no, I'm sorry, I don't know how many weeks that was. I think what I did though, the first little bit was when I was still using sand. So I dumped that in the bottom and then I added a lot of branches. And then the next one was a little bit of sand and then I went peat moss and then I've probably done 2 or 3 more buckets of peat moss in here. Okay. Easily a month worth right here. So what this is, the shorter white pieces that you can see are, I think, a foot high, and I think it's 36 or 40 inches wide. I had some scraps. I'm like, all right, let's go with that. From what I'm reading, you want to build up temperature. I didn't want to waste a full sheet of OSB. Well, I didn't have a full sheet, but I didn't want to waste good wood, so I used some leftover wood from other projects, scraps that I tore down. I'm going to leave this one open to the air because I don't have a smell, and oxygen needs to get in to help finish the process. All right. From everything I've read, toilet paper isn't a problem. That'll eventually break down, and I'm seeing it starting to break down already. Like I said, I mixed in some of the scraps of dead bushes. Anytime I dig out a bush, I started saving it in a pile, and then I'd break it up and throw it in the bucket with it. So that's a little bit of sand, some poops, some peat moss, and the dead branches, and the toilet paper. I've also been adding once in a while some coffee grounds. I drink a lot of coffee, so I'm saving my coffee grounds, and then every so often I dump them in the bucket. I'm going to let this sit until the trash can is full. By then I'll probably have some more OSB scraps. The setup that I saw that I liked the most, the guy had made multiple bins that were all connected. And so he would have an empty bin on the end, and so, it was like, fresh, and then 2 weeks old, 4 weeks old, 6 weeks old, and so on. By the time it got to the end, that was ready for the garden. So he would sit there with a pitchfork or a shovel, shovel this into the next bin, and then this was empty, and then you take that bin and shovel it into this bin. And then your trash can is like the first bin. Because it's supposed to get hot, I figured the black trash can would do that well enough to kill any of the bad pathogens, is what I hear it called. Basically bad things living. When it gets hot enough, it basically sterilizes itself. So 140 degrees is enough to kill those. All right. Once that's dead, then what's left of the microbes will take over, and they just kind of process everything for you. There's a lot of information on this. Some places say you want air to get on. Some places you say you don't. I think mostly you do. If I keep it in the trash can, I'm not getting the air to work, but I am building up the temperature. And I think that's beneficial in the first stage. Once you kill the pathogens, then I'll dump it here and let it process. So by the time the trash can is full, I'll build a second bin and then rotate it. And I'll probably come out here once every couple of weeks and stir it, with a shovel and just turn it over, because that helps to get the air in the process. From the ones I've seen, this maybe isn't big enough, but I also need it to be deep enough to keep the temperature inside. If it's too shallow, that won't work as well. You need temperature for it to process. So I figured, since I'm only one person out here by myself, I'll do smaller batches, let it be a little bit deeper. And in fact, looking at it now, I probably could have gone 24 inches by 24 inches instead of this is between 30 and 40 inches, depending how big the scraps were. But I'll leave this open to the air. After I dumped it in there, I was curious. I just kneeled down in the dirt and got my head right down to it. And I really couldn't smell poop. I can smell peat moss, and I can smell kind of a musty smell because it didn't get a lot of air in it. But I can already see the bugs crawling in there, and that's kind of part of the process. The first stage, I kept the bugs out, and now we'll just let the bugs do their thing. And I'm hoping I'm far enough away from the bus that I don't create a huge fly problem for myself or whatever. If not, bring the wheelbarrow over and I'll move it further away. But I have not smelled this ever. So far so good, right? And the bucket in the bus really doesn't smell either, which is, freaking amazing. So that's it for that. I'm just going to leave this. Again, this is the 9th of September. I'm getting a couple of weeks, I think, out of that bucket. Just dumping a little bit of peat moss in every time I use it. I'm not stirring it in the bucket. Mainly, I was going to, and I couldn't figure out what to do with what I stirred it with when I was done. I actually took a piece of plastic pipe one time and I stirred it when the bucket was still outside, and then I'm like, well, what do I do with the stick, with the pipe? So I didn't stir it after that. I figure I'm just going to let it do its thing out here. Now, when it's out here, I'll stir it with the shovel and let it be. Kind of go from there. I'm not a gardener. I do think probably next year I'll think about building some kind of a greenhouse, and if I can grow a little bit, that's less food I have to buy. Potatoes probably, or something like that. I'm not sure if I want to use poop on my compost on my potatoes. We'll kind of think about that for a little bit, but I may mix something like peat moss into what's left of the soil out here and see if I can get something to grow and go from there. Might also use potting compound and grow a few hills of potatoes at a time and go kind of experiment. It's not going to be 40 or 50 hills like we used to grow on the farm. Start small. I got lots of time. The next thing I'm going to do, just kind of rinse out the inside of the bucket. It's getting kind of scungy looking. I'm not going to do spend a lot of time cleaning it. Just going to dump this over in the bushes. It's mostly just water at this point. Okay, now it's less awful, right? Not putting a lot of time into that. So next, I'm going to get a start of my peat moss. Alright. Little shovel for that. So I'm just going to put a couple inches in here. I don't want to start with too much. In all the videos I've seen of the guys that have the Nature's Head and the commercially available composting toilets, they say start with a little bit of water in there. I don't know why. So I'm going to just give it a quick shot over here again. I left over my outdoor shower. Just enough to get it wet. Shake it around a little bit. And by mixing it, now I've got the water mixed in and it's not a puddle in there. It's just enough to add moisture. I'm not really sure what that does. It didn't seem to hurt last time, so I've been doing it when I first start, and then the poops are going to be wet anyway. You always have moisture in there. And the moisture, again, hasn't been a problem, which is weird. But anyway. I'm just keeping the lid on here mostly just to keep, well, one, if I did get a lot of rain, I didn't want that to fill up with water. Let me summarize, I guess. First of all, the experience, just for starters, if you're doing this in a 100,000 RV, you'll make it nicer. Hopefully you'll have a little more money available. I think the idea of a Nature's Head toilet, it's very well engineered from what I've seen, and if you can afford it, yeah, I think that's a good idea. For the rest of us, if you can't afford a $1,000 toilet, this is working remarkably well. I've put so little thought into it, and after the fact, it's just been a non-issue. I really am surprised how well it's worked. I wish I had thought of it, trying it a year sooner. But, live and learn, right? So, start off simple plastic bucket. The one I'm using is smaller than the 5-gallon bucket you would see at like Home Depot. Home Depot, yeah. You could use that. It's a little bit tall. You might measure your toilet and see what's comfortable height for you. But yeah, I'm just putting a couple inches of peat moss in the bottom. I sprayed it just a second with the sink sprayer just to put some water in it. Then I swished it around so that the moisture was absorbed into the peat moss. I'm not sure why you do that, but a few of the videos I've seen, they all talk about adding some water. So go with that. After that, once, in the bus, I just put a bucket lid over it. I drilled some holes in the bucket lid when I first started using it with sand just to let the moisture come out. I do notice there is some moisture condensation on the lid. A vent would be a good improvement. It's on my list. I have vent dryer ducting, basically, that I could totally do that with. And what I would do is maybe rig up a small fan, which, a computer case fan, I've got a bunch of those, 12-volt fan that's easy to set up. I just haven't felt like I needed to. It was like my first thought, well, I'm going to put it there for a few days, and if it smells really bad, I'll hook up a fan. Hasn't been a problem. It's weird. It's weird that it's not a problem. I expected it to be really awful. It's weird. I'll just keep saying weird until you get the idea. When you're ready to use it, I just take the lid off, and what I'm doing, I have a little bucket that's got the raw, clean peat moss. So I'll set the little bucket close to the back door, take the lid off of the poop bucket, set it vertical over the peat moss bucket, and then the moisture just runs into the peat moss. You're putting more moisture in the peat moss, not a big deal. Okay, but yeah, you're losing the moisture from the poop is coming off as vapor. That would be good to vent, but I haven't smelled it. And at 100 degrees, if there was a problem, I would know about it. Okay, so take the lid off the bucket, grab a toilet seat, just a regular toilet seat. I just set it down on top of the bucket. There's no hinge, it's not attached, it's just sitting there. Sit down carefully, don't put a lot of weight on it. I have broken the top of the bucket a little bit. All right, there's room for improvement there, but I'm close to 200 pounds. You know, if you're not the person that can sit down gently on something, maybe you could work on something there. But sit down, do your business, wipe, throw your toilet paper in on top of everything. Then I grab the clean peat moss and just a little shake. I think I'm still putting too much peat moss in there. I'm putting more than I need. It's not a big deal. It was $15 for 32 gallons basically. You know, they talk about cubic feet, but I took that in an earlier video. I dumped it into a 32-gallon trash can just to contain it, and it was right full when I bought it. It was like $15. Okay, that trash can now is about half full, and the first couple I used too much. In fact, I dumped raw peat moss straight into my composting pile or composting container, trash can, just to get it started because I didn't really know what I was going to expect out there. So I probably wouldn't waste that again. Okay, so this last couple of buckets I've been using less, and I haven't had a problem yet. It doesn't feel like it's saturating. I'm not doing anything to mix it. I just, poop, wipe, toilet paper goes in, a little bit of peat moss on top, put the lid back on, and I'm done. I push it kind of into the corner where it's out of the way. I usually just put the clean peat moss bucket on top of the lid, just stack them up so it's out of the way. Toilet seat just gets pushed kind of into the corner, and we're done. It's that's it. I just go until the bucket is kind of getting full, and then I take the bucket, go out to the big trash can, just dump it in there, throw some branches and stuff in there to add to the biological goodness. I don't know. There's websites that talk a lot of details about mixing your browns and your greens, and they're talking about leaves and wood, so that you have a nitrogen carbon mix. Pretty sure that's what they talk about. I don't have enough experience really to talk. I'm just sharing my experiences here with you. It's I guess for right now, the takeaway is I'm pleasantly surprised and amazed that it hasn't been a problem. It's a non-issue. It doesn't smell. It's the tiniest bit of an earthy smell. Now, one addition, I am not peeing in the bucket. Urine, from what I've been reading, you'll get a urine smell, but you won't smell the poop. So on the Nature's Head toilet, they have a pretty simple little thing. They got a couple holes drilled, like so you poop, it goes into a little receptacle. If you pee in the poop while you're pooping, the water mass, the urine, will kind of go down and through these two little holes that then end up in a separate container. And when that fills up, if you're in an RV, they just say dump it in with your gray water. Okay, that seems fine, So you take a shower, that water goes into gray water, a little bit of urine goes in the gray water, not a big deal, and then you dump your gray water tank. So it doesn't go in with your sewer, your black water is what they call it, your poops. So don't pee in the peat moss, I think would be the other thing that maybe isn't obvious. I'm a guy, so daytime I just go pee on a bush. Done. And that's kind of another thing. I was kind of aware of it when I started doing that. I'm like, well, I don't want to pee too close to the bus. Even when it wasn't raining, I very seldom notice a urine smell. And there's times where I'm probably pretty dehydrated. It's not clear urine. It's pretty dark some days. And I very seldom smell it, which is weird. But you're out here by yourself. It's, my nearest neighbor 3/4 of a mile away kind of a thing. So there isn't a lot of people. I haven't noticed that even being a problem. Nighttime, because I'm not a fan of stepping on rattlesnakes, and I have seen snakes directly right around the bus here. I just take some old Gatorade bottles, I pee in those. Next day, take them outside and I dump them on a bush. And I'm going, most of it is probably within 100 yards of the bus. Haven't had a problem. You know, if I really said, oh geez, I'm getting a really nasty urine smell, then I deal with it. You know, take it further away basically. Hasn't been a problem. I'm not sure why. I would have thought it would have been. Alright. So going forward, or you know, if there was women in the camp kind of thing, you'd have to come up with a better solution for urine, peeing. Pee in a funnel, have that go into some kind of a container that you could then, or pee into a funnel that goes into a hose and have it go far enough away. That's, you know, a simple enough solution. I mean, take an old garden hose, hook up a funnel to it, have something you can sit on, pee in the funnel. You know, some experimentation may be necessary, but I still haven't set up a permanent drain field or whatever for my laundry. I'm still experimenting a little bit with recycling the laundry water, filtering, also evaporation. I'm still playing with that. I don't want to pee in that. I think that would be a bad idea. So I may end up still setting up an evaporation or a drain field just to get rid of that. If I do a drain field, I would pee in that. No big deal. You know, because that would be far enough away that it wouldn't be an issue. As far as my total water out here right now, laundry is the biggest thing. Shower is the second. So, you know, as far as what to do with your waste water, this is the desert. It evaporates so fast. I had a little hole that I dug. Well, little. It's probably, let's say, roughly 4 feet by 8 feet, maybe 3 feet deep in the middle. I didn't make it square. I just dug a hole. And when I first dug it, I needed dirt for something else, and so I dug the hole, wheelbarrowed it to where I was going. And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, that was kind of in a creek bed. It was easy digging there, so I just dug it deeper. And my thought was, if it filled up with water when it rained, maybe I could pull out the water after it settled for a day and have something, you know. The water there soaks in so fast. I never really was able to catch water in that hole. You'd see it fill up on a rain. By the next day, it was gone. All right. So when I got the washing machine, I just ran the hose out to that hole, and it just soaks in. The bushes around there are thriving. You know, I'm sure that my laundry detergent isn't exactly safe for plants. I'm not eating the plants over there. I kill a few bushes. Well, it's not the end of the world, right? I think it probably tastes bad enough that the animals are staying away from it. Maybe that would be a good idea to put a fence around it so the rabbits don't try to drink it. But, you know, it's so sudsy that when it comes out of the washing machine, nobody wants to drink it, I'm pretty sure. So I haven't seen a line of dead animals around it. Not the end of the world either, probably. Maybe I sound a little like I don't care. I do care. It just hasn't been a problem. Yeah. I guess I just wanted to do an update on that because if anybody was kind of keeping track of it, it's been a non-issue, I guess is the best way to say it is. You know, when I first set up the bucket, I was going to leave it outside. And then I'm like, well, you know, my thought was, let me experiment with it while it's warm enough. And part of the issue has been the rattlesnakes. I had one morning, now I'm not 100% sure that was a rattlesnake, but I had a snake within 5 feet of the bucket, and I didn't see it until after I was basically started pooping. And then I was kind of relaxed a little bit, and I looked over, and here's a snake coiled up. Not a very big one, but it was completely coiled up within 5 or 6 feet of me. And yeah, that's not something you want to see first thing in the morning when you got your pants down, all right? So that's kind of when I started thinking, well, how else can I do this, you know? And at the time, the bucket was actually where the outside shower was. I figured, let me put the bucket there. It's kind of sheltered. And that's exactly what the rattlesnake thought. He was just looking for shelter. It was kind of windy that night. It was kind of cold, early spring. First few snakes that I saw, kind of thing. So after that, I'm like, okay, where else can I put the bucket? Because I don't want to have the bucket sitting in the background of all my video shots. I'm kind of like, where can I put the bucket? And I'm like, well, all right, fine. So then I come up with the idea to try the peat moss experiment. And that kind of came out because I was thinking of building a separate shower room outside of the bus. And then I thought, well, okay, I could build a toilet in there and then go dig a hole and actually set up a proper septic system and a drain field. And I kept looking at it. I'm like, man, that's easily $1,000 worth of stuff. Plus I have to haul water, because if you have a flush toilet, you need water to flush the toilet. And I'm like, well, I'm hauling water just to flush the toilet. That seems wrong. So then I started thinking about gray water recycling from the laundry system. And I'm like, okay, because I already had bought the washer and dryer. So I'm like, okay, if I catch the water from the washing machine, I don't feel too bad about dumping that in the toilet to flush the toilet. Now I'm getting 2 uses out of that water. Okay. So then I kind of like, okay, that wouldn't be so bad. And then I was like, well, yeah, but it's still $1,000 for a septic tank, and then I have to dig a hole and, all that. So then I started thinking about the Nature's Head, which I had known about for a couple of years, and I'm like, okay, rather than digging a hole that requires me to then dump water regularly into it just for the sake of making whoosh, let me go get a composting toilet. And then I went full circle, and I looked at the Nature's Head for $1,000 and the septic system for $1,000, and I'm like, I've already got a bucket. What makes the Nature's Head work? Peat moss. And keep the urine out. Okay. Usually I pee on a bush anyway, so that part's easy. Let's go, so it was literally, well, let me go buy $15 worth of peat moss and see. And here we are. It works. Other things, if I'm doing a lot of cutting of wood, I have been sweeping up the sawdust. I figured, okay, if you can dump wood chips or whatever into the compost, why not add sawdust? And out here, it's not like, oh, let me clean up my mess. I could throw the sawdust in the wind and let the ants eat it. That would be fine. But the more compostable material you can dump into the material, the more your output. Because if you decide you want to do gardening, why not have a lot of material compost to use? Okay. So that's kind of where it all came full circle again. I was like, well, all right. So I've got, the peat moss, the poop. If I save my apple cores and my banana peels, I throw them right in with it. Coffee grounds I'm throwing in with it. That's about it, because I don't do a lot of cooking as far as, fresh fruits, vegetable prep, or, if you had a garden, you could save your carrot tops and throw them in there. You could throw your potato peels in there. People say, oh, if you don't, all your food waste. Well, I pretty much eat all my food, so I don't have food waste. But yeah, you can throw all that right in there. And then if I dig out a bush, I'm letting the bushes sit out there next to the bucket, and then I dump a few in every time I dump my bucket. And it's just adding to it. Eventually, over time, I don't know if it's going to take 3 months or 6 months, or I really don't care how long it takes. But eventually that'll all break down into this nice, fluffy, brown, dirt-looking stuff that the plants seem to like. All right. It was, I keep saying full circle, and I guess that's it. I went from thinking about $1,000 septic tank, which does have a purpose, but mostly you don't get anything back from it. You're making the poop go away. This way, you're taking the poops, adding a little bit to it, mixing it up, let nature do its thing, and then you're using it for growing, which out in the desert seems like a good idea, because from what I've seen, if you can do a little bit of irrigating, a little bit to help the soil, we've got plenty of sunshine. Things do grow out here. So why not take advantage of it instead of letting it all go down the drain? Okay. Maybe I'll update you later when I, add on to the compost pile. And definitely if I ever get around to building either one idea would be a grow bed. I've seen raised growing platforms. Maybe I'll do a greenhouse, hydroponics, aquaponics, something like that. But there was something that I could hit this real quick. How much time do I got left? Yeah, why not? I've always lived, well, okay, growing up on a farm, I lived pretty far out. We're about an hour from the main real store. But since then, I've lived walking distance a lot of times from a grocery store. You just walk. It's easier than driving sometimes because you have to park. And you get enough groceries for a few days or a week or whatever, throw it in your backpack, walk home. Or, you drive. Or I used to have a Costco card and I'd go stock up a couple times a month at Costco, get what I wanted. So you think, okay, I can eat, I probably don't spend $5 a day on food. A couple cans of, a can of chili, a can of mini raviolis, a can of soup, some sandwiches, Cliff bars, maybe $10 a day if I'm eating really good. All right. So that's relatively inexpensive, really. I could probably do better if I cooked and if I grew my own food. But then you think, okay, you got to put the time into building a greenhouse or gardening or picking weeds or keeping the rabbits out of your lettuce, and so it's not just easy and free. There's work involved, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind a little bit of work, but at the same time, for the money, it's pretty easy for me to just go buy food. Except, I usually only buy food either near where I work or I drive all the way into El Paso. Well, that's a long ways away. So when I do go, I stock up pretty good. All my canned food and so on. So if I could grow potatoes and I don't know, I'm not a huge gardener and I don't, salads are nice. I used to really enjoy getting a salad bar once in a while. So if I could grow lettuce and, my mom raves about tomatoes, and I've never really been a huge tomato fan. People, some people just go gaga, oh my God, a fresh tomato. Yeah, I'll eat it. It's good, but I never got that excited about it. Yeah. I guess, where I'm at now, though, if I could supplement what I buy in town with something that I could grow locally, then it starts to make sense because I can go less often or buy less. And maybe I can get to the point where I don't have to take the truck. I can take the motorcycle a day after work and bring home a couple dozen cans and make that last me a couple weeks instead of taking the truck. So now I'm getting 45 miles to the gallon instead of 18, that kind of thing. So yeah, if I can grow something local, it's more work, but I gotta take into account getting to where I can buy the food. So that does become a factor again. So, just notes, I guess, at this point. And I know things grow out here. That's the fun thing. I look around. Not all of these are edible. In fact, probably none of these are edible unless you're a cow. But it is remarkably green around here, considering this is supposed to be the desert. So if I can catch rainwater, store rainwater, water, look for plants that I can grow to eat that don't need a lot of water. That's the tricky bit. Lettuce is mostly water, I think. But, maybe I can take my idea for recycling some of the water that I'm using and have it growing some of the food plants. And then take the compost, add that to the soil, make a growable, soil media kind of thing. It all comes together. A lot of the things that I'm doing out here, I'm not necessarily all green and environmental. I try not to spill oil when I do an oil change because I know that contaminates the soil and so on. And as soon as I can get away from driving my truck, I will. If eventually I could see doing an electric conversion on the motorcycle, which would be freaking cool because instead of burning gas, I could be recharging it off my solar panels and I could get free miles. It's realistically possible. So if I can get to that point, I will. But I won't spend a lot of money to do it, is the thing. Anything I'm doing now, like trying to recycle water, that's just to reduce my need to go to town so often to haul the water. So if I can catch rainwater and extend the water that I got from town by recycling some of the laundry water, that just means I go to town less often. It doesn't save me any money on my water bill, it just saves me money on my gas bill getting to town. But otherwise, I'm doing it more to be practical than to be environmental, I guess. So, anyway, if you got anything out of that, cool. Hit the like and subscribe and whatnot, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and do comment. I try to read them all and I answer as much as I can. I would say the last part, I live off grid. I don't always have time to check my messages right away, so I do get back to you guys at least once a week, and quite often sooner. So don't think I'm ignoring you right away. Stay tuned. Well, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, that should work. Cool. I do things differently. Oh, and please, if you like any of this, it would be really awesome if you could subscribe and click that notify bell. Drop a comment if you have any questions or ideas. Share, like, comment, subscribe, notify. Oh, and Patreon if you're really an awesome kind of person. Thank you so much for watching.